layout for September. I'm also following along with the prompt from Scraptember. So that prompt was 6x6 paper pads. And then the 5 things that we're using in today's Scrapfive challenge is, hopefully I get this all right, we need to use wood veneer. We need to use 3 or more colors, an animal photo or animal embellishments, an ink pad, and I know I'm missing one thing. Hand journaling. That's the last one. So those are our 5 items, products that we have to use in our layout for this challenge. And those 5 items were put together by Kelsey. Her link is down below so you can check it out, as well as everybody else doing the Scrapfive challenge today. So please go and show them some love and see what they come up with. I'm working with some traveler's notebooks. I need to get them done, and I had a lot of fun doing a layout a couple days ago, and so I thought I might as well just keep going with it. And in this particular traveler's notebook, I knew that I had some pictures of animals. So I first decided to go with this particular layout. You can see that I've got 4 pictures, and in 2 of them are these big giant frogs. They're obviously not real frogs. It's the theme of this kind of playground that we take the kids to. It's broken into all the different sections of basically where your food comes from and your farming comes from. So the first section is sort of like the swamplands and, I don't know, how the soil becomes fertile and stuff like that. And then it moves into mushrooms, and then there's fruits and vegetables, and it's a giant playground where everything looks like apples and pears and all of that. And there's a section on bees and a section on bats, and there's a giant ant farm. It's just all kind of, farm stuff and where our food comes from. So I definitely knew that I had these animal pictures that I hadn't scrapped yet, or hadn't created a layout for yet. I've shown you some of the layouts that I've created. I think there's some process videos of other layouts in this traveler's notebook showing this same park and just, the playgrounds and stuff. So I knew I had these ones, but I kind of felt like it might have been cheating just a little bit, because technically those frogs aren't real animals. So I'm going to actually do 2 pages, because when I decided to pick this one, it was just sort of the next page that needed to be scrapped. But a couple pages away from this, if you flip through, I have some pictures of my kids with the goats. And so I thought I might as well go ahead and do that. These have a lot of pictures to them, so there really isn't a lot of embellishing. There isn't a lot of room for a lot of extra stuff, and so they're 2 pretty quick layouts. They kind of came together really quickly, and I'm just going to use the same stuff. I'm going to use the same prompts. I'm going to use the same papers that you see me using here, and my ink pads and everything. So I ended up doing 2 layouts. So you guys kind of get a 2-for-1 in this video, and I love the way both of them turned out. They're super, super simple. On this one here, I'm doing just a little bit of layering with these strips of paper that came from an Amy Tangerine paper pad, and I kind of just picked the green, the yellow, and the pink because I knew that I had ink pads that would match these colors, and they're pretty similar. They're not exact matches, but they're pretty similar. And I thought, because Kelsey didn't really give us a direction for how to use the ink pads, it literally just said ink pads, that is what I would do. So here I am using these 3 distress inks. They're the oxide inks. And I'm literally just plonking them onto the paper. And I love how this turned out. It gives this really kind of cool texture. Those oxide inks dry slightly chalky, and so they have a different texture that just really kind of elevated the background paper from just a boring notebook type paper to something a little bit cool. So there's definitely some texture in there. You see all three of the colors, and because they're all sort of blended together, I think they actually match really well. And then it also just gives a kind of different, unique look to the background, because there's really nothing precise or lined up or symmetrical about it. And so I really love how that turned out. And I think I should get double points or bonus points because I literally used the ink pad as my product. So that's my little kind of pat on the back to myself. But I don't know. I love doing stuff like that. And I think it just creates such a cool pattern. And every time you do it, it's going to be completely unique. And every time you want to do something like that, you pick different colors. They kind of blend differently, and just, yeah, it's just fun. So why not? That's what I figured. Why not? And I wasn't too worried about the ink coming through on the other side of the page, because the page that's in between these two also has quite a few pictures. So most likely I'll end up covering most of the page. But also I feel like the oxides, rather than soaking into the paper, they almost sit on top of the paper because they have that more chalky consistency. And so they don't tend to bleed through as much, or at least that's what I find. I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to stamping and the different inks and stuff like that. I just feel like if I don't want my inks to bleed through, the oxides are probably the ones I'm going to pick. So definitely, experiment with that on your own. Let me know down below if you actually know if that's a thing or if I'm just making it up. Because there are certain inks that definitely, I know every time I reach for it, my Ranger Archival ink, the black one, is going to bleed through on this paper. And so I tend to stamp onto something else and then add it into my traveler's notebooks. But my oxides rarely bleed through unless I'm adding water to them or I'm being really heavy-handed with my inking. And so here is the second page that I'm kind of doing because I feel like this fulfills the animal prompt a little bit better. These pictures are of actual, real, living, breathing animals, and not just my children, but actual animals. There are some alpacas on one side, and then this piece here is kind of a collage of the kids with the goats. And so I feel like I'm not cheating quite as bad by actually including some animals in in this layout. And so to incorporate my inks this time around, I decided to do some splatters. I just used the leftover larger pieces of the papers, the 6x6 papers that I had chosen. And so I just created a sort of blocking, or I guess you could call it a blocking pattern or a grid. And now I'm going to splatter some of those inks. So I'm just using some packaging with the white background. It just helps me anyways to kind of see how much ink I'm plopping down. And then just a water brush, you get it a little bit wet and kind of splatter. And here's another case where I really feel like the chalkiness of this ink helps it to sit on top of the paper rather than soak into it. And so when you look at it, there is a touch of dimension to it. There is a touch of like a raised look to it. And so I really love that sort of added some texture where I wasn't necessarily intending there to be any texture, but it kind of breaks up just the flatness of the paper. So I really like that. And this is another really fun way to use the oxide inks. If you aren't a big stamper, but you still like to incorporate inks into your stash, I love doing stuff like this. They work really nicely. And I do really like that if you want the oxide inks to blend, you can kind of mix them and get them to blend. But I'm not really waiting for each of these colors to dry. and I'm able to kind of splatter, and they're not really mixing. It's like the chalkiness to them, or whatever that kind of opaque consistency is, whatever makes that consistency, also kind of stops them from bleeding and spreading too much. So you can see the individual colors, and you don't have to wait as long as you would if these were watercolors or a more traditional ink. So once they did fully dry though, I went ahead and added some more wood veneer on here, and those two little hearts that you see, and that little thing that says currently loving. On this side, I did also add 3 little pieces of wood veneer. Those I can't remember where they came from, but they're very, very flat, soft sort of balsa wood. I think they came from Studio Calico. And they're perfect for in a traveler's notebook because they are so flat. They give almost no dimension at all, but they're wood veneers. So I definitely get that part of the challenge as well. And then I'm finishing it off with my hand journaling. So that's all 5 things. I've got at least 3 colors. I've got animals in my pictures. I've got my wood veneer. I used my ink pad and the hand journaling. So that is all 5 of them. Plus I used the 6x6 paper pads for the Scraptember prompt. So I'd say that this was a success. I'm going to check those all off, or I guess I'm crossing them out. And that is it for me. Those are my layouts for the Scrapfive challenge. Again, those links are all down below for everybody else who's participating in the challenge this month. So go and click on those links, show them some love, and see how they tackle all of the elements of the challenge. And thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Chat with me down below in the comments. I love to chat with you guys. Click subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, happy scrapping. Bye.
Bye. Thanks to me. To my channel.